Hello, Year 9. This is Mr. Vincent again. Hope you're all well and staying safe, and hope you had a restful half term. Today, we're going to be looking at ecology, and that's why I'm standing in a woodland area. But before we continue with today's lesson, please pause the video and have a go at the starter task. Okay, we're going to look at the answers now. Please pause the video again to mark your work. Hope you had all of them correct. If not, please go back, look at the mistakes you've made, note them before moving on. Okay, we're going to continue a study of ecology. And as we look at ecology, we want to talk about ecosystems, specifically look at the keywords that are used to describe or explain an ecosystem. And therefore, we want to look at the words organism, population, community, and ecosystem and describe these words and define them. The first word we want to look at is what is an organism? An organism is an individual living thing or living entity. Examples of organisms are animals, plants, and microorganisms. At this point, may I say that in biology, when we talk about animals, it includes everything from human beings right down to what we will refer to as animals in our everyday language. That's your horses, your dogs, your cats, your lions, your tigers. What those are what we refer to as animals in everyday. But in biology, we refer to anything including insects, including humans, we refer to all of them as animals. As long as they cannot produce their own food, we refer to them as animals. Plants, they produce or make their own food. So plants and algae, they are in producers. And then microorganisms are like bacteria, things we cannot see with the physical eyes. We have to use like a microscope to be able to see them. So an organism is an individual living thing. So when we looked in earlier in this academic year, when we looked at levels of organization, we did talk about unicellular organisms and multicellular organisms. Unicellular organisms have one cell, single celled organisms. That means the one cell perform all the functions for that organism. And multicellular organisms have more than one cell, and so it has specialized cells that perform specific functions. We've looked at specialized cells as well. Now, for us to be able to determine that something is an organism, there are 8 points that we normally look at. That means the organism, first of all, must have at least one cell. It must have a DNA. The organism should have the ability to grow and develop, have the ability to reproduce. That means multiply or have offspring to pass on the genes and things like that, obtain and use energy, maintain homeostasis, and respond to its surroundings. So, if anything can do these 8 things, then or has these 8 features, then that particular thing is an organism, a living thing. Okay, the next thing we want to describe is population. What do we mean by population? Population is the total number of just one species that live within a specific geographic area. So all the members of a single species that live within a geographical area. So example, we can look at the total number of ducks in a pond, specific. We look at all the daffodils at Leeds Castle. So if you can count all of that, and then you can find the population of daffodils. But there are scientific methods we use, which you'll learn about when you get to year 10. We call them quadrats and transepts, and we look at the population density in that case. But we've not got to that point. When we get there, we will go into depth with this. Let's move on. The next word we would like to define is community. What is a community? So Please, by the way, feel free to pause the slides and write down these definitions because you need to know them. You're going to be questioned on them when we get to the quizzes. So please make sure you write down the definitions. Feel free to pause the video as we move on. Now, a community is all the different organisms that are found in a particular habitat. So, and when we mean all the different organisms, it includes both plants and animals. That's what we mean by a community. So example is all the animals you can find in a particular location. Let's say if you go to the rainforest, all the different animals, different insects, different plants or flowers, whatever, all of them that you can find in that area is what will make up the community. The other word we would like to define is habitat, and that just refers to the place, the area where the organisms live in. Okay, so have several habitats we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at grassland habitats. We're going to be looking at polar regions, wetlands or swampy like areas. We're going to be looking at oceans. We're going to be looking at deserts. And of course, I've already mentioned the rainforest. And we can talk also about urban areas because we have, of course, that is another part type of ecosystem. So we need to talk about that because you have domesticated animals, you have we humans living in there, and we can talk about what is happening there. So all of these different regions that you can see on here are referred to as habitat. Is the area where the organisms live in. Okay, now we reach to the hierarchy, the top of the chain, because in the ecology chain, you start with the individual organism, then the organism has a community, a population first, then a community, and then we go to the ecosystem. Now, the ecosystem is a definition of things, the place, of course, where the organism live in, and then the community, all the organisms, different organisms that live in that community. When we put these two definitions together, we have that an ecosystem is the name given to plants and animals that are found in a particular location and the area in which they live in. This particular page, you need to know it, know the three definitions on here: habitat, community, and ecosystem. Right. Another thing we would like to talk about is niche. Now, when we talk about ecosystems, every organism in an ecosystem has a place and a role they play in that particular ecosystem. So let's take this oak tree ecosystem. Right. First of all, it has been divided into three sections. The first section is the branch and the leaves, which has bees, wasp, and birds in it. The second section is the trunk, which has insects and larvae. And the third and final section is root and what we will refer to as leaf zone, which has bacteria, earthworms, wood lice, and fungi. Now, the leaves of the tree falls to the ground. It is the duty of the bacteria on the ground to help the leaves with decomposition. So they help decay the leaves go back, the nutrients from the leaves get back into the soil, dissolve in the soil in water, and the tree takes it up again. But of course, also that enriches the soil and even the worms get a part of that. So the bacteria in the soil play that specific role to help with decay. So each of these things have their role to play in the ecosystem. So a niche is a particular place or role that an organism has within an ecosystem. Remember, you can feel free to pause the video and write these definitions down. Okay, please pause the video and have a go at this. Okay, we display the answers now. Number one should map to C, number two should map to A, number three to B. Hope you had all of them correct. The next, again, pause the video and attempt these three. Write the word definition for these three terms. What is a habitat? What is population? And what is community? Okay, I display the answers now. Please mark. You had said a habitat is the area where an organism lives in an ecosystem. You still get the mark. You can use the word area or place. Population is the total number of one species in an ecosystem. And a community is all the different plants and animals living in an ecosystem. Or if you've said a community is all the different organisms living in an ecosystem, you get the full marks for that as well. You can pause the video to mark or write down these answers if you so desire. Please pause the video again and have a go at marking these. Okay, let's look at the answers. Hope you had all of them correct. We're moving on. I want to talk about the interactions within an ecosystem. So for all ecosystems are self-supporting. So all the requirements for living organisms to grow and survive are present within the ecosystem. That's why they're there. Because if the conditions were not suitable for them to be there, they won't be there. They would have become extinct or would have evolved or moved away, migrated to other parts where there are favorable conditions if they are able to migrate. So we got to remember that. And when we talk about all the requirements for living things to grow and survive, we'll be talking about the biotic and abiotic factors. That we'll briefly explain in the next two slides as we go on. So, one of the key things about interactions within an ecosystem is the fact that there's what we call interdependence. The plants depend on animals for carbon dioxide. They depend on animals, in this case specifically insects, for pollination, and they depend on animals for seed dispersal. All of these insects, pollination, and seed dispersal was studied in year 7. I hope you still remember bits and pieces of that. Now, but the animals also, we depend on plants for oxygen and food. Remember, oxygen is one of the waste products of photosynthesis. So the carbon dioxide plus water reacts to make glucose plus oxygen. The glucose the plants uses it in respiration, and the oxygen we use it, they give it out, and we humans use it to breathe. So both plants and animals depend on one another for survival, and that is what we call interdependence. This is another thing we're going to be looking at. We talked about this last year. You can pause the video and see if you can remember, especially with the help of the photograph, what 4 things animals compete for. Please pause and try this out. Okay, you'll find out first of all from this first photograph, you see animals compete for food. Here you can see water and different animals. So we compete for water, we compete for space, and we compete for mate. So we compete for food because we need food to give us energy, and also it's one of the raw materials we need to complete life's processes, like to grow and develop. We need mates simply because we want to pass on our genes. And of course, water, we need it for our survival, is very important. You can write down those 4 things animals need compete for because you're going to be asked that in the quiz. Okay, what 4 things do plants compete for? Again, the pictures should help you. Pause the video and see if you can recall what 4 things plants compete for. From the photograph, the first one, you can see the bright sunlight through the woods. So we compete for light. The next one, somebody is watering their garden. We compete, plants compete for water. Another thing plants compete for as well is space. And finally, based on the roots here in this photograph, plants compete for minerals in the soil. Again, last year when we talked about minerals, we know plants need especially nitrate and magnesium for growth. Of course, water, which was the first two, light and water, they are both needed for photosynthesis. All plants and algae need light for photosynthesis. Water is a reactant in photosynthesis. And of course, they need space for healthy growth because the more sunlight their leaves are able to receive, the more they can photosynthesize. So if they are in a shade, that will prevent them a bit, except if they're adapted to shade. Okay, here are three questions for you to try out. Please pause the video and have a go. I will display the answers now. Hope you had all of them correct. Okay, this is the end of the course. You can now proceed and do the quiz. Thank you.